So
Okay.
yeah. So if you want to share your screen, Michael, and then I will share this when it is done.
Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to be able to do that. Well, thanks guys for having me, and I really appreciate being part of this initial relaunch of the Charlotte Marketo User Group. I've been in the Charlotte area since 2018, and my name is Michael Tucker, and I'll get into a little bit about myself a little later on. But thank you so much, Christine and Courtney, for having me on this first rebooted virtual Charlotte Marketo User Group, and I'm excited to be your first presenter, really in this new era of your community. So thank you so much for having me on here. Today's session, we're going to talk a little bit more about being able to use Marketo to really help kind of nurture customers after they've made a purchase decision. And this is a little bit different than a lot of the material that you hear about Marketo to begin with, right? A lot of the use cases that you hear about publicly are about how to get new customers, how to build leads and nurture those leads to a purchase decision. But what happens after the purchase decision is arguably more important as important, if not more important, than making that first initial purchase. I had an old boss back in the day that used to say to me, it's not the first sale that you make with a customer that counts. It's actually the second sale. And so that's a big piece of what we're going to talk about in our presentation today is how do you increase your customer satisfaction rate, and how do you move that process along after they've already initiated the relationship with you using marketing automation? So I'll tell you a little bit about myself first and kind of give us a background about us. So my name is Michael Tucker. I'm a three-time Marketo certified expert. I've been working in the platform for, I think, coming up 6 years now, actually. And, part of that time was working for another agency. And these days, I run my own agency called the Conversion Store. I like to kid around and say that we're at the intersection of prospects and customers, because that's really what we're trying to be able to do, is to be able to build up on those relationships and kind of work and help support marketing operations teams to use Marketo and the full breadth of all the different features and functionalities of the software to kind of make it work for the organizations that are our clients. In addition to that, we work not just with large enterprises, but also now we're starting to work with more mid enterprises and even more of commercial SMB markets, and that's through a new partnership that we have with SharpSpring as well too. So we have both of those skill sets, but ultimately, what we're going to talk about today is really building upon those relationships with our customers that you can use. It's independent really of what marketing automation platform you're on. It's really more about where your specific customer is inside of their journey and how to be able to manage and deal with the nuances of the communication at each of those stages within the journey that we want to talk about. The other thing, just from a background piece, is as we mentioned, we run the manufacturing user group virtually. We've been doing that since 2017, so a lot of experience kind of working on the virtual space in terms of building communities. And we definitely invite you to participate in that, and also invite you to participate in, we'll talk at the end of this presentation about all of the different communities in the Marketo user group space. I mean, you can find that at mugs.marketo.com. And outside of the Marketo space, becoming more active in a community called Mo Pros. So you can find them at the Mo pros.com. And that's an independent community. It's not owned by us. It's not owned by any other agencies. And it's not owned by any other software platforms. It's literally a group of, I think it's about 13 to 1,500 people now that are different marketing automation, marketing operations professionals that get together and they talk about all the platforms, Marketo, Pardot, HubSpot, and even the CRM softwares. So definitely encourage you to kind of get involved in that as well. What we're talking about today, as we mentioned, is in the customer journey. So these are people that we're talking about that have already gone through the awareness process, and they understand that they have a need for a product or service, and they've gone ahead and they've made a purchase decision and selected the right vendor that they want to use, and that vendor is you. So what do you do with the communications to be able to help build after the sale has been made? And this is really important because, when you look at the numbers and the research, that first step, that awareness, evaluation, selection process to get a new customer costs you 5 to 25 times more than it would to be able to retain the existing customer that you had, according to Harvard Business Review. And then the other factor is once a customer makes a purchase from you, that experience is really important to be able to drive the reputation that you have and to be able to kind of capture the value of that relationship. If a customer has a bad experience with you, they're 7 times more likely to talk about that negative experience than if they didn't have one with you at all. So it's important to be able to kind of keep that in mind and exactly what's at stake here as we're going through these communication processes. And what are our goals with people at this point? So a couple of things here. We want to reinforce the purchase right away and say, you made a good decision by doing business with us, and here's why. And here's what's in it for you is always a common question that people ask when they're thinking about sales or marketing and doing business with each other. And so you want to be able to reiterate that even after the purchase is made, so that there's no what do we learn in school, right? Cognitive dissonance, buyer's remorse, right? These are things that can kill a deal after it's happened. I've seen them happen firsthand in my sales career at different points, and it's painful to see all the work going through to make a purchase to have that suddenly unravel afterwards. Encourage adoption. So, especially for those of you who are in the software as a service space, right? You want people to be adopting and using your services, your software throughout the year that they have or the 2 years that they have. And a lot of times the economics in those type of businesses are, if they don't hit the renewal for year 2, you really don't hit break even point on your subscription with the software well into year 1. And sometimes it can be even into year 2 as well too, if you're an earlier phase SaaS company. So there's a lot at stake here, and you want to be able to keep people using and seeing the value throughout that entire subscription so that they hit the renewal button when they need to, right? And then the other thing is if you can do those first 2 things well, boy, are there a lot of opportunities for you afterwards too, to be able to turn those customers into, you're not trying to avoid negative situations. You're actually working with your customers to promote positive situations and be, some of your strongest advocates. And especially in the Marketo community, we'll talk about some of the wonderful, vibrant advocacy opportunities that exist within Marketo, and that Marketo has built over the years because of work just like what we're going to talk about today. So how do you do this? Well, the first thing is let's take a look at all the different opportunities to have here really quickly, right? So, your customers, we think about omnichannel a lot, right? But if you look at this from a grid kind of going around, right, you really want to start off and be able to communicate to people in kind of low involvement ways that they can quickly participate in, and then slowly ratchet that up over time so that you might ask them to do more things to be able to build that relationship, but you're also making sure that you're giving it's a give and take, right? You're giving them something back in the meantime while you're doing that. And that might sound a little confusing right now, but we'll get into a couple of different examples and some use cases that help to kind of explain what that's all about. But if think about this, how much work does it take for you to read an email or a text message that comes in? And what's the value behind doing that, right? Whereas when you're going to have a meeting with your customer service manager, right, then or your customer success manager, then maybe that's costing you 5 minutes or half an hour of your time, so that's more involved. When you're looking at webinars, that might be an hour of your time, and then actually going to a physical event, that might be half of your day, right? So you have to be able to think in terms of your marketing communications. What am I offering to people to incentivize them to participate in those events? And the more that they participate in each of these different tools, the more that they're going to get back from it. So that's the first tip when you think about the tactics. How do you want to use this? Well, you want it to take a moment and you want to give a little and then get a little back. So you come at it, the beginning of your conversation with a sense of appreciation. Thank you for your business. We really appreciate it. And here's what you're going to get. Here's the brand promise. Here's the value proposition of why you made this purchase, and here's what it's going to do to alleviate or solve some of the challenges or the concerns that you have making this purchase to begin with, right? And you follow up with asks, but you're also giving something back in return. you have smaller asks and you have bigger successes that come out from that, right? Nobody starts there. It's just like when you're making the initial sale, right? You don't come out right away and say, will you buy this product on the very first sentence that you have with the person? They'll say, well, I don't know anything about you. Thanks very much. Have a great day. And a lot of times you hear the analogy of proposing marriage on the first date, right? I like to kind of take a little bit of a take with that and kind of say, okay, well, there's midway points in between, and I like history a lot, and because we're here in Charlotte, North Carolina, I think a lot of times about the Wright brothers in the first flight, right? They didn't just say we're going to build an airplane and then start, and then just whole airplane appeared out of nowhere. You have to kind of get to a midway point in between that. Think of all the different technologies that existed but before that, right? You had, wheels and then technology to build some of the piping and whatnot. And in case of Orber and Wilbur, they ran a bicycle plant in Ohio before they moved here to North Carolina. And so, their work before inventing the airplane was really about inventing the gear shaft that you use in a bicycle to be able to help turn the pedals and make a wheel move. Those are some of the intermediary points that you have to think about. The same way as you're getting a positive relationship with a customer, is you have to build a lot of these in between points to be able to help build those experiences. And personal connections are key. So it's not what you're doing, it's the relationships that you're building. It's the fact that I'm on a webinar and that Courtney and Christine and I have a positive relationship from our previous interactions in the Marketo community that builds that bond, that makes me think, oh, look at all the things that I can do with Marketo now that I've attended this session. It's the areas that drive me to go to the other user group sessions, right? That builds my positive experience with Marketo as a whole. And that's what makes me a loyal advocate and a brand ambassador for the automation platform. So we want to start off with a case study here really quickly. We'll talk about Monday.com, which is the project management software. I'm sure a lot of you have seen advertisements for them and what they do when they do an initial setup. So take a look at the way that they start this off. Their first thing they say is welcome. Thank you so much for being a customer. Let's get started right away. Get into your account. And so this first link here is just a CTA that you'll see up at the top here that gets you in. But you'll also see they're reinforcing right away that messaging that says, hey, there's 100,000 teams that are just like your team that are using this, that are getting success. So it validates the purchase decision that you made, and you're going to achieve more together. So you're giving features in this. Obviously, they're talking a little bit about how you can build out the organization work that you need to do for your business, but you're actually doing it to achieve more together, right? So there's sort of a succinct message that's there that's talking about exactly what's in it for me. What are you going to get out of making this purchase with Monday? And they don't let that linger. So you've got appreciation and gratitude, and they get that out front and center first, so you understand that I'm an appreciated customer for Monday.com. And then 10 minutes later, they'll send you a first steps email and say, okay, great. We've got that out of the way. We have a wonderful, positive relationship together. Now let's get going. Now I've given you something. I'm going to ask you to accept a new mission from me and sort of gamify it and make it sound like it's something, I think of Mission Impossible where they had the exploding box that you had to accept this challenge in the first 5 minutes. But think of all the great things that you'll do out of accepting the mission, right? And so they pose that to you in a way that's fun and playful and makes you, want to explore that and go, well, what's the mission? Tell me a little bit more about that, right? And they say, well, create a board. It's not very difficult to do. We're going to give you a video that shows you exactly how to do it right now. And all you have to do is click on this and we'll take you into the section that teaches you how to do that. So you make that really simple. There's little involvement for them to be able to read this email. They can do that in a minute. And to create the board, what is that? Maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes at most, but you're not reading through documentation to do it. We're actually going through the process of making a video. And then a week later, coming back or the moment that you log in and say, okay, great, they made that first step to log in. Well, what's my next step? What can I take to move them along a little bit more? And inviting them to a webinar is a great way to do it. There's less involvement than if they had to, let's say, fly to another city to attend Monday.com. And what it does is it helps you as early as possible get an introduction to your customer success manager. And they're trying to put that person forward, because now I'm not just using a project management tool. I'm also going to contact Kate or whomever at Monday.com. And that's going to be my go-to person now. If I have questions, if I get stuck, I know that Kate's got my back, and she's going to be the person that's going to answer all of these different questions for me, and make sure that we're there and we're getting things done and we're building the value out of this, right? And I do that as early as possible because I'm trying to reinforce that behavior. And also, we're going to be flexible with you so that you have the ability to be able to participate. Can't make it on Monday? Okay, no problem. We have a Tuesday, a Wednesday, and here's Thursday and Friday as well too. We want you to have success, and success happens on your terms, not our terms. It's your terms as the customer. So it's always around what that customer is and what you're trying to do with them. And more so than that, right, you have to try and kind of reverse engineer and say, okay, well, what are we trying to accomplish in the path of this nurture? And so ideally, if you could lay that out for your customer directly and say, we have noticed over the 100,000 teams that have been using our software, these are the key steps to be able to launch off initially, right? Set up your account, upload a profile picture, install the desktop notifications, invite the rest of your team, and install our mobile app, and so that it gives you a metric to be able to actually say, I know that a customer is moving further along if they've completed 3 out of the 6 steps versus 1. I know that they're moving further along if they've completed all of them. And so you're setting up breadcrumbs basically that move you along the path to building those really good long-standing relationships. Now, beyond moving on the path, you still want to be able to quantify things. And obviously in today's day and era, and especially in some of these digital businesses that we're all moving towards now, being in the pandemic, we have a lot of different opportunities to be able to do that. And it starts off, obviously look at your CRM data and the information that happened during the purchase process. But, also take a look at the information in terms of what your customer success team is putting inside of their section of the software that they use. It might be different software than your CRM, right? You might use Salesforce as your CRM, and maybe Zendesk to help you in terms of customer success, or Service Cloud or something like that, right? So take a look there. A tool that I've used before with clients has been Net Promoter Score. So you ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your experience like with our product or service, and would you recommend that to your friends? And so Certicat's a tool, they're a LaunchPoint partner that you can find in the LaunchPoint community. They're great. They have really custom activities, and their integration with Marketo is really strong. And what you can do with this is you can save the date that and the score that people responded to you, so people responded with a 10 or a 9 or are advocates, and people that maybe you want to recommend them to give you a positive review on G2 or another review engine. And then also those are people that if you had a negative experience, maybe they scored a 5 or less, then that's somebody that you want to get in touch with right away and say, oh, not, what did we do wrong? How can we help to improve this relationship, right? Build a personal outreach, have the salesperson that closed the deal get in touch with them. Whatever you need to do to be able to rectify that as early as possible, so that you get ahead of this, and that way you're telling your customers, I care. I value whether or not you have value in what we get. So you're always working with them that way. And then, the other piece of that is obviously Marketo itself is a great tool for being able to kind of build this out. So when you're looking at your nurtures, you say, well, who do I want to nurture as existing customers? And if you have your Marketo instance tied to an opportunity, or tied to a CRM, then use that data. That data is going to sync in and become available for you to be able to read in your Marketo instance, so that you can quickly put in a filter and say, well, has opportunity. If it has an opportunity and that opportunity is 1, then they're a customer. And one of the things that I like to do is to be able to take the Net Promoter Score data information and then use that as sort of a milestone moment where I know, okay, I've laid that down and I have that written into my opportunities through a Salesforce workflow, or another CRM feature. And basically, I'm using that date to be able to say, okay, they made a purchase. Here's the response that they made, and you can even add another condition here, and if you want to say, well, what is the response that you made, right? And then take them into the path, basically moving forward, right? Send an alert to your sales team and says, it's been a quarter since we closed this deal. Just follow up with them, right? No news is not necessarily good news and when it comes to your customers. So you should always make an effort to be in touch with them, and think of this a lot like the service level agreements that you have in the middle of your sales process. There's some great Marketo user groups coming up that are going to be talking about life cycle in a couple of weeks and building that out. Well, the customer life cycle doesn't end after the sale has been made. So you want to be able to kind of build in these alerts to keep your sales team, at least thinking in the back of their minds, this person is going to renew at this specific date, or this person is a customer. So I now have an obligation to make sure that they have a good experience here. I want to just pivot for a moment too, because we're talking about engagement programs and all the different ways. So we covered this about a couple of months ago for the Atlanta Marketo User Group, talking about local weather personal conditions. And so if you're interested in that, and you want to see a detailed video of a case study that we did in that space, you can go to conversionstore.com/weather. And what we talked about there was being able to talk about Lowe's home improvement and being able to use local weather conditions to personalize and nurture for those customers. So, I won't go through the whole case study, but just the pieces of it that are relevant to our discussion here is that, there are more things than just sending an email out inside of an engagement program in Marketo. So you can send a text message, you can send an event invitation. If you take a look here, we have two different segments of customers inside of Lowe's Home Improvement as an example case, as a fictitious example. So if you're a weekend do-it-yourself consumer, then maybe we'll invite you to a session that'll be an experiential session at the store that will talk a little bit about how to use this particular product or service that we sell in aisle 18 that maybe you've never been to before. But it opens your eyes as a customer to think, oh, I always go to Lowe's Home Improvement to buy this and this and this. I've never thought about going to buy this, and I could probably use this in my house. And likewise, for the professional contractors, maybe the contractors that are doing residential projects that use Lowe's Home Improvement as a major supplier, these are great times to put customer appreciation events into your nurture stream as well too, so that they're augmented. And also, social media, right? Use Marketo Ad Bridge to be able to tie together that data about what segments do this and that, to be able to put in, Facebook sponsored ads or LinkedIn sponsored ads around whether you should work on your grouting or your tiling in your bathroom or a plumbing job versus buying, outdoor home improvement equipment or barbecue equipment, right? So you have different kind of nuances that you can tailor to the different types of customers, how they're responding to Net Promoter Score. It's the same level of personalization that you're getting out of the product by being able to change your MarTech stack based on and adapting that based on the sort of feedback that you're getting from those different customers in an automated way. And so really at the end of this, right, we're trying to build customer advocates. All of these different communication pieces that we're talking about are really, if you do them right, and you build that kind of personal, emotional connection with your customers, well, then the sky's the limit in terms of what you can do with that. And think about Marketo, think about this very session, think about me and Christine and Courtney and different people who are, building their careers off of this software product. It's much more than just a block of code sitting on a cloud server somewhere for us. And I'm sure it is for you as well too. This is a way to be able to kind of build something greater than yourself, right? So think about all of the different champions that are out there. They're doing champion office hours. They're asking questions. They're supporting. And really they're doing it out of their goodness of their heart. There's a lot of other things that they could be doing, but they're investing the time because it matters to them, and there's a deeper care and commitment that you're seeing. Think about the Fearless 50. Think about everybody that gets together at Summit. Think about the user groups themselves, all the different people that spend time logging in and take time out of their days to be able to learn something new about how to use the software platform. And so that's what you're ultimately trying to encourage people to do. That's what you're going to get out of this. If you spend time and money and energy out of your day to be able to focus on your existing customers, it makes it easier for you to be able to kind of grow and increase the results of your marketing program with less effort, because these are people that are already committed to you. So be committed to them as well too. So that's my session really around customer nurtures, and I'll be glad to take some questions if you drop them into the chat box to talk with Courtney or Christine. And then also, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to be able to accept any requests and any communications as well. My personal email is michael@conversionstore.com. That's direct to me. I want to talk to you a little bit for a second about some of the other, because we're talking about advocacy at the end of this. Our session for our virtual user group for manufacturing is next week, and it's Saurabh Gupta, who is formerly in charge of Salesforce.com's enterprise architecture, and he actually has a company, and they're going to be talking about updates in data governance privacy laws that are happening at the end of this year in India and Brazil. So if you do work in both of those markets, or you're concerned about GDPR and your CCPA compliance, Saurabh has really built a lot of architecture into being able to help address all of those issues and concerns. And so that's a really good session to be able to go to. It's Thursday, October 22nd at 3 p.m. Eastern. And again, you can sign up for that at conversionstore.com/mugs or at mugs.marketo.com, and that'll give you a listing of all of the different user groups, which you'll see a summary of some of them that are here. And special thanks to Amy Goldfein in the Silicon Valley, in the San Francisco mug, for being able to put this together, which just talks about some of the upcoming mugs that are happening. So we have virtual mugs that are happening in Europe. We have the one that you're at right now tonight. We actually have a joint Marketo user group that's happening between the Seattle and the San Diego mugs, which are our coworkers and colleagues at Christine's. And we also have Salt Lake City, our one. And then, there's all sorts of other events that are happening here. So these are all at mugs.marketo.com is where you can find the updated calendar for all of these different events you can sign into, and you can, keep up to date and go to attend those different events later on as well. Once a month at the very first weekday of the month, Warren Stokes in England and I team up, and we host a panel of different Marketo user group leaders. Courtney was our speaker at last month's session. And so this one coming up is on Monday, November 2nd. And it's at 12 p.m. Eastern time. And we basically take an hour, and we will help to summarize all of the Marketo user group sessions that you just saw in the slide beforehand. So if you're a busy marketing executive, you don't have time to go to 2 or 3 of those sessions, you can attend our 1-hour session. We'll give you a rundown on all of them. And we'll also introduce you to the YouTube channel that we built out for Marketo. It's a Marketo virtual user group session. I put a redirect again on here. You see a lot of those, but I do them to make it easier for everybody to find. So it's conversionstore.com/video. And then on here, we have summarized and aggregated all of the different recordings of the user group sessions. And I'd like to hope that we put this recording on that session as well too for this event. And so you can go there at any point in time, and you can see all of the recorded Marketo learnings from Europe, from Salt Lake City, from Chicago, from San Francisco. All of these different user group leaders and Marketo experts worldwide put content on here that you can go to reuse and repurpose. So feel free to sign in and participate in that and learn something. And you can do it at all hours of the day or at night, whatever is suitable for your schedule. And that's it for me. So, thank you all for taking a little bit of time. I hope I haven't gone over time here. If you have any questions, feel free to, again, send me an email at michael@conversionstore.com. And then also, we publish pretty frequently on our blog at conversionstore.com/blog. And we'd love for you to be able to subscribe to that as well too, and talk about all things Marketo. And I'll take any questions that you have right now, and be happy to kind of open up a dialogue, with any answers that might come from the audience too.
So I guess Hannah and Adam, thanks for joining us today. Are you guys actively doing any kind of welcome series right now for your customers, or like onboarding or life cycle?
No, we're not. We're pretty green when it comes to marketing. They're pretty much rebuilding the department, so we're trying to start everything from the ground up. So I'm just trying to jump in and see what others are doing in the industry right now, and get some more ideas of what I can bring back to the team. But yeah, it's right now we're going in for the marriage and saying, hey, take this product tour, without actually nurturing to anybody right now.
Okay. Well, I think that's an interesting space to be in, and the great part about that too is it sounds like you have a bit of a blank canvas that you can be able to
Yeah,
architect off of too.
absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of space to grow. It's just getting everyone on getting everyone on the team on board with it. The instance is new. We switched from Pardot, back in February. I'm new to the team within the last like 3 months. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity here.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, definitely, would love to be able to kind of chat with you about that too. And I think, Courtney, I think you just recently did a migration too, so it'd probably
Yeah,
be.
that's what I was gonna say. Adam, it sounds like we're in very similar spot. I might just be a little bit farther down that path than you. So we got our Marketo instance implemented in January of this year. And when it's so much opportunity, it can be oftentimes hard to prioritize where to start. So
Right.
would be happy to chat with you offline about how we approached it and where we're at.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
Appreciate that.
I think that's a big, from what I've seen in the community over the last 3 years, like one of the great pieces about that is getting to kind of connect with other people who are customers to the team, right? Like, I mean, Christina and I work in services and consulting, right? So that's one thing, but I think it means a little bit more and one of to have interactions with different people who are sitting in your chair, who are kind of working client side inside of the organization, and then also to be able to kind of say, okay, well, how do I match what my organization needs with what the software can do? And the kind of elephant in the room is the software can do a lot of different things, right? And that can get kind of overwhelming. And so that's where I come back to that picture with the Wright brothers and kind of starting to kind of crawl before you run, before you sprint, before you go to the Olympics or something like that, right?
So I think that brings up a good point. Like, the Monday.com example is wonderful, right? But to like Adam's point, blank canvas, they don't really have anything running right now. So if we were to give Adam like, hey, these are maybe the 3 things you should start with in trying to get buy-in and even plan for this, right? Like, Adam, are you guys a Salesforce CRM
Yes,
customer?
we are.
Okay. So I love the data side of stuff like this, and I would absolutely 100% say that you should start with even like asking yourself the question, can I even identify my customers? Because like you can't really do any of this if you don't know who is what in your CRM. So like the CRM health and the data that's being passed to Marketo is like very important here. And then of course you have like content building. And I don't know what your content team looks like internally, but in terms of like, do we have a team to help support development for stuff like this? Because you're looking at a runway. I don't know your business obviously, but you could have a subscription model that you're looking at like 12 months. So like, what is our span of communication touch points? Like, it's just, I don't know. That's like 2 things I would start with. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add, but tactically, like what should you do to even begin this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we just sort of implemented our customer welcome sequence like maybe 3 months ago. And it was one of those situations where like our customer communications team was sort of working in a silo and then came to us and was like, here, build this. And so we've had to take a step back with them and sort of level set and be like, address the question that you had, Christine. Like, first of all, our Salesforce CRM data is not great. So how do we start to clean that up? What can we do in the customer onboarding process to ensure that we have the right points of contact? What triggers do exist in our integration between Salesforce and Marketo, and we're like a SaaS company. So in our platform that we've integrated into Marketo too, like what can we actually trigger off of and send these types of emails, and then like level set with the team there. And so we sort of started with like a let's start small and scale approach as well. And like you were saying, Michael, like introduce their customer success manager, introduce them to resources where they could learn more, like try to identify a few key milestones that like would be pretty accurate, just in terms of like the timing of sending a trigger-based email and like congratulating them on how they're adopting the platform. So yeah, just level setting, but making sure we're doing like the strategic and process work on the back end as well to like try and clean these things up, so that down the road we can implement a more robust welcome nurture program for customers.
That's definitely been the challenge for us, is identifying the customers and identifying, just the target in general.
Right.
It's that most important step. And when you're syncing Salesforce and Marketo, when you have the opportunity to remap those fields, right?
Mm-hmm.
That step was not taken when they connected our instances. So, depending on how we look at it, I mean, I can slice it 4 different fields and different combinations just to understand if someone's a customer. So it's pretty ugly. We're starting with the data dictionary and trying to understand what we have. We're remapping Salesforce, working with Marketo support to get, the fields remapped in Marketo. So we're starting from like the ground up just to get the system really operable.
Yeah, that's always a challenge too. And especially from the Marketo side, right? Once those fields are built out and mapped, then you really do have to leverage customer support to be able to help you with some of the work of either cleaning up fields or changing some of the mapping around a little bit. From the Marketo side of things. I'd like to, kind of ask a little bit if I can, and I don't want to pry too much on a recorded call, but to get a little bit more context too, right? If you've gone through kind of the exercise of sort of thinking strategically about whether it's existing customers that are the priority, or whether it's acquisition in the short run, or you know what I mean, it's worth kind of sitting on a blank piece of paper and kind of thinking, okay, what do I want to do in the first 3 months or 6 months, basically with this, right? What's the biggest priority for where my organization is? And ultimately, you're the only person that can really answer that with your internal leadership team, right? But if you spend 3 or 4 months building a good customer welcome program, but you determine that you actually need to get more customers at the end of the day, right? And that a customer, an incremental sale means X amount of revenue to you, and you're doing a reasonably good job with retention, that you might have all the scenarios there for a business case that says, okay, I want to focus on customer acquisition at the moment, and we'll run the status quo with our retention and our existing customers, and then up that, right? So there's different scenarios where you do want to use this and you don't want to use this, and that's why it's important to kind of look back at the organization and kind of say, okay, well, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, tactics, right? What do we want to do from a strategy level, and then let that dictate the technology and kind of what you want to do from that side of things.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. I think that even having Marketo it's a mind shift change for everyone, because when I first started, it was more of Marketo is just handling inbound leads. That's all. That's all it's going to be used for, right? Which we know that it's much more than that. So the idea of even doing customer nurturing or post-sale, anything like that, is kind of foreign, right? So we're still in the mindset of it's fill the funnel. How many MQLs are coming today? Not necessarily like, all right, now let's talk about advocacy and getting the customers engaged with our platform. So it is a definitely mind shift change for us.
That's exciting.
I think you have an awesome opportunity, Adam, to do not even at a system level, but define out like your funnel stages, right? And then group your database into those funnel stages, and then look at the percentage of breakdown. And if you can see that your database is actually like 80% prospects, then your priority should absolutely be prospects. If you have like 60% of people that are in a closed won opportunity with your company, then obviously your customer onboarding is probably a priority, right? But it's like truly like data. I don't know. I just feel like decisions should be data driven. And like, let's not theoretically think that people should get this or whatnot, but like, how long is your average sales cycle? When does handoff happen? Like all of that. So you're like in a unique position that I think is actually a positive. It's just, you know, you can kind of take this and run with it, but that's probably how I would look at it as well.
Right. Yeah, there's just a lot of change management going on right now. A lot of data flow mappings and you know, making sure there's a proper alignment between sales and marketing. So yeah, definitely on the ground floor, lots of opportunity to take it wherever it needs to go.
Yeah.
Hannah, can I bring you into this conversation a little bit? Because from our previous discussions, you know, you've been in a couple of different instances, and it sounds like you have your own experiences as well too. I'd love to hear, you know, any insights that you might be able to share about how your teams have collaborated in the different organizations you've been in, and how you kind of structure priorities really around what you want to do in Marketo in a given quarter. And you're on mute, but can you hear me?
You may have stepped away for a second.
She might have to. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, that's a question I think for that we can open up for the group, right? Like you know, Courtney, your client side, right? So, you know, how do you guys pick what you want to do in the next quarter? Like, how do you deal with priorities? Does it all come down from the CMO, or do you sit in a boardroom and kind of throw darts on the wall, or how does that work?
I mean, I feel like it's similar to what Adam is talking about. Like, my team will come up with our priorities, but then it's really whatever senior leadership directs towards us on a given week, month, whatever. So I feel like it changes often, especially at a company like Avid Exchange, where we're growing really quickly. There's a lot of pressure to perform and hit our goals, like Adam was talking about as well. So, I mean, we definitely have like marketing operations goals that we've defined under demand gen in terms of priorities that we want to go and achieve, but it just really changes with how things are going internally in the business and where we need to pick up and support to make sure other demand gen team members are hitting their goals.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the Monday.com example is kind of you know, really it's a fictitious example in a way, right? Like it's not, I don't work with Monday.com, and that's not a client of mine, but you know, we have looked at them as a vendor. And so that's where a lot of this material comes in from. But you know, having worked in software as a service companies historically in the B2B space, you know, I noticed the conversation around renewals is an interesting one. It's not always followed up the same way that it should in different sales teams, but there's also a lot of different kind of complication or consequences that kind of come out of that, whether you make a renewal or not make a renewal. And so working in that business, you know, what does a renewal mean to you? And then how does that renewal process kind of get set up? Is that automated, or is there a person that's kind of that's driving that for each of the clients or a department?
Are you asking me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I could.
No, current state, our sales team really like our existing sales team really drives that whole conversation, along with like their customer success manager. So we have, that's part of like the customer nurture program that we've outlined that we would like to add, but our data in Salesforce right now is not where it's at to be able to run that program in an automated fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where your buy-in from sales is like 100% required, right? So it's like, are they fine with marketing,
right,
them touching
right,
accounts, right? And the people there. And so without that, like that's very hard to achieve.
And that's been like a very touchy subject. Yep. Well, like when we first introduced Marketo and told them we could send emails like on their behalf to their opportunities that they're working like in their name, they were like, no, absolutely. You know, like now we've gotten some buy-in for that, but they are just very particular about their deals and their relationships, which makes sense. Like,
yeah.
And something that's added on top, and I know that we're almost at the top of the hour here, is for us is our sales team has just implemented SalesLoft. And it's like, we are going to manage this whole nurture strategy for them over here, but yeah, we're not going to talk to marketing. So that we're still trying to bridge that gap. and say, look, we need to come at this together as a team, because at the end of the day, you know, we're all in it, right? So
Yeah, my company is actually in the process of evaluating SalesLoft too, and they've looped me into that conversation, thank goodness, because that's one of my concerns. It's like, wait a second. So who's going to be owning the nurture strategy? Like, how are we going to be determining the cadences? Like, how do we make sure there's not duplication of efforts?
Yep.
And that's where very much like marketing and sales alignment needs to happen. And I just don't think we're quite there yet. So
I think those are interesting considerations, and I recognize the time too. But you know, I'm looking forward to the life cycle session in 2 weeks. I think Amanda Thomas in Houston is running that, and that's always a question that happens towards the later stage of those life cycles: is where does sales involve? And I can speak to it from a sales perspective, having been in that role at the very beginning part of my career. Is that you don't want anybody touching your sales, because you know those existing customers are arguably easier to sell to, and when you're trying to make quota and margins for your personal metrics, right, that's that's a big deal if that doesn't go through for whatever reason. And I want to point to one other thing too, that you know, it's in the Marketo documentation. I don't know that it gets enough credit. I know that, you know, I sit on I try and attend the weekly New York Marketo User Group office hours with Sanford Whiteman and Inga Romanoff as frequently as I can, because they work at a technical level like this. But there's an article inside of the Marketo doc section about in-app notifications. And, you know, we always think about grabbing Munchkin code and being able to put that on a web server and, you know, with WordPress or whatever you use for your content management system. But, you know, you can also use a lot of that code for Marketo inside of mobile apps as well, too. And you can use that at different touch points with all sorts of different pieces of the technology that your customers are using. And so if your product is web-based, if your product is, you know, think about all the different products that are coming out now that are internet connected, right? The refrigerators that are being connected now to the ecosystem. All of those are communication channels. To be able to put in a small piece of JavaScript code like a Munchkin code, that's not a very difficult thing to be able to do for those product developers. And the benefit is you know, Marketo is in a very flexible infrastructure where you can take the data that's coming in through those JavaScript calls and be able to do quite a bit with it. And be able to pass a lot of information to it. So that's a whole different section. It's way beyond this, but something to food for thought, something to think about. And then if you want to, you know, add to the myriad of different requests that Sanford has about how to use JavaScript, you know, those are the pieces. I love to talk to Sanford about those sort of things, because I just think that there's so many different creative things you can do with it. And the weather personalization piece that I just brought up was a very simple way to be able to take third-party data sets and be able to kind of enrich your Marketo instance and do some pretty interesting things from a consumer behavior perspective. So just something to think about. And I think that's a good place to kind of get us going.
Our next topic, because I do want to be respectful of people's calendars and time. So Adam and Hannah, thanks for joining us today. I'm sure we'll be posting our upcoming ones and topics. So, and Michael, thank you so much for presenting. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great to be here.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
thank you, Michael.
I would just add to, like, as we're getting this ramped up for the Charlotte Mug, like, if you guys have any topic ideas that would be really interesting to y'all, feel free to forward them to me and Christine, because we want to make it engaging and exactly what you guys want to learn about. So don't hesitate to reach out.
appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.